we just haven't seen enough of Dan Campbell in charge of an offense that's had great pieces.
What can Dan Campbell do to get from 30 to 16 this season alone?
I mean, this is where I think you need to see that multiple win improvement from the Lions to start giving Dan Campbell more credit. If there's one thing Dan Campbell has done right, it's get buy-in. Whether the guys are superstars or not, you need that.
Joining us via satellite, I've always wanted to say that, Cody Benjamin is here from CBS Sports, and we're talking about his rankings of the NFL head coaches. He put Dan Campbell at number 30, and kind of the reason why I initially asked you the question about how you were ranking these is because when I'm talking about this type of ranking with a head coach, I want to take Dan Campbell and give him the Rams team. And then I want to evaluate how he would be able to coach that talent. Because right now we're evaluating Dan Campbell on coaching the Lions. And I think you take any of these highly touted coaches and give them a bad roster, they're not going to look nearly as good as they do. And you saw that a little bit with the Rams. You keep adding pieces to Sean McVay, he's going to turn it into a winner. So if we evaluated things that way, do you think Dan Campbell would be in a different spot on here?
I think there's no question he'd be in a different spot. I don't know that I would go as far as putting him, like, I don't know it's so easy to say swap him with Sean McVay and the Rams Super Bowl champions. Yeah, I'm not quite ready to go there, and I think that it's really just what can you go off of? Like, what have we seen from Dan Campbell? And like Braylon said, the sample size as far as him, in today's NFL, if you just want to boil it down to, for instance, in these rankings, if there was a close call, philosophically, I'm just geared to lean towards the offense because in today's NFL, you have to be able to build around the quarterback, build an offense that can score points. And so, we just haven't seen enough of Dan Campbell in charge of an offense that's had great pieces. And so, yeah, I mean, you could put him, if you really wanted to put him at like 15 or 16 and you wanted to take him above a guy like Nick Sirianni, like that's another example. Nick Sirianni had a little coordinator experience coming out to be the Eagles head coach. He didn't have necessarily a great roster that was kind of torn down a little bit after Doug Peterson, but yet the Eagles went 9-8. I know they're in a bad division. They don't have to play the Packers twice a year. But yeah, it's just, I think that's his character is there. The improvement down the stretch was there. The offensive pieces, maybe besides quarterback, are there. It's just, what are the results this year when you've got Aaron Rodgers without Devontae Adams, when you've got the Bears clearly rebuilding? I mean, this is where I think you need to see that multiple win improvement from the Lions to start giving Dan Campbell more credit.
Yeah, I agree with you, Cody. I'm going to ask you a question, but I'm actually jump on what Stick said just in the interim period right now. We don't play that game. We can't play the game of, well, if we put this guy here or if this guy was on this team, guess what? We live in the real world where that's not possible. You look at Dan Campbell last year as a head coach. He didn't know what he was doing for the better part of the season. He cried because it was too much in the team. He got a little emotional because of his emotions for the team, his emotions as a player. He took over as offensive coordinator late in the year. He didn't know what he was doing as offensive coordinator. There was a bunch that he was trying to figure out on the fly. So if I'm looking at your list just from that standpoint, Dan Campbell is where he belongs. Now, he has a chance to get better. He has a chance to move up these lists. But if you look at some of these individuals, Robert Salah, you saw what he built out there on the defensive side for the San Francisco 49ers, and you see the potential in just knowing that he can do that. Brian Dable was the offensive coordinator in Cleveland when I was there. He's also been offensive coordinator with the Patriots. He's also been offensive coordinator with the Bills, and you see the success. So some of this list is looking at what guys have done in the past as it relates to how they're going to coach.
I was just trying to get him to bump him up the list, man, and whatever angle I had to take to get him above 30, that's what I was going for.
But you got to get a better angle than that, though.
Get off,
I got a better
Dan's ass right now. That's
I'm not on his ass. I'm just saying, I'm not on his ass.
Don't forget, he studied under Sean Payton. You guys are forgetting that.
I also saw what he did last year as a first-year coach. I saw it look like it overwhelmed him a lot last year. I saw he struggled in the season. And yes, we talked about them not having the right pieces, the right players, and it's going to come. But if you're looking at just that, you can't put these guys above him, or you can't put him above those guys. Now, getting back to your list, top 10. What goes into the top 10, I want to say, because you got some good guys. Most of these guys in the top 10 either have a Super Bowl championship or they've been to the Super Bowl. What is it that separates a Mike Vrabel, who was coach of the year last year, from, let's say, a John Harbaugh, who had a lot of injuries and didn't make the playoffs last year? What separates those two?
I think honestly, once you get to the top, and you nailed it. I mean, those top coaches, the top tier, are either guys who have won it all, in the last, on their current job, or they've proven. Kyle Shanahan's an example where he hasn't won it all, and he's actually had more losing seasons than winning seasons. But when he's had it together, they've almost gone the distance. I mean, they've been either really good or they've kind of bottomed out a little bit. But yeah, it's those guys who have done it. And I think the thing that separates a guy like Mike Vrabel and a guy like John Harbaugh, besides the championship, is just longevity. I mean, a guy like Pete Carroll is getting a bump. A guy like Mike Tomlin is getting a bump because they've just done it well for so long. And that's I think what separates it. I mean, if you can be an Andy Reid, a Bill Belichick, a guy whose teams are consistently in the mix to be playing in playoff games, I mean, that's what you're asking for as fans from the front office. So those are the guys that get the bumps there.
Cody, quick question before I get to the other guys. What can Dan Campbell do to bump himself up this list? What can he do to go from 30, obviously not in the top 10.
Win, baby.
What can he do to get to, let's say Zach Taylor, let's say Nick Sirianni, because obviously Zach Taylor went to the Super Bowl last year. Cliff Kingsbury is probably the only person I really hate on your list is Cliff Kingsbury. I hate Cliff Kingsbury. Yeah. But Nick Sirianni, what can Dan Campbell do to get from 30 to 16 this season alone?
Yeah, I know I heard somebody yell win.
Definitely it's got to be win, but
it's got to be multiple wins. And I think that, so you were touching on this idea that Dan Campbell didn't know what he was doing and that he kind of switched offensive coordinators. I think that actually you could pull some positives out of that too. I think that there's a humility, a vulnerability that he's shown in terms of, whether it was the crying or whatever. But I think beyond that, the fact that he's willing to make a change at coordinator in his first season. And Nick Sirianni did a similar thing. We were just talking about him handing play calling duties off late in the year. That's something that you take pride in, coming from the offensive side of the ball, getting your first head job, and to be able to change responsibilities, to admit something wasn't working. I think that if there's one thing Dan Campbell has done right, it's get buy-in. Whether the guys are superstars or not, you need that. And, I look at a guy like Doug Peterson, who's actually pretty high on this list, going to the Jaguars after his Eagles tenure. His last few Eagles teams, they didn't have great records. They were a little too dependent on those late season finishes. But the one thing you could always say about his teams were that they were always in. They never quit. And so that's something I think if that stays evident, even if the wins aren't in the 9, 10, 11 range, that's going to be key. I don't know if I can pose a question to you guys, but I mean, how much do you think Dan Campbell bears responsibility for what happens at quarterback going into this season? I mean, are you comfortable going into this season with Jared Goff as like this committed guy?
No.
Maz is a no. I'm a solid yes on this because if you look at what he did last year when Ben Johnson finally got in as the offensive coordinator and Dan Campbell was taking over more of the play calling, and they signed Josh Reynolds, a wide receiver he was familiar with. The offensive line was fully healthy. If you look at the back end of the season, he performed. Is he the guy that's going to win you games? No, but we need a guy that's not going to lose us games at this point here in Detroit. So I'm willing to give this guy every opportunity that he has, and mostly because we don't have another option to go to. We saw what happens when the backup came in. And to your point about Dan Campbell making that offensive coordinator change middle of the season, I think that does show great leadership because one of the best things you can do as a leader is recognize a mistake and fail fast. Get rid of it, move on, and fix the situation. And that's exactly what Dan Campbell did. And he didn't lose the locker room, which was amazing.
Yeah. But no, Braylon? I agree.
Yeah, I believe in Jared Goff too in terms of what they have now, what they're working on the defensive side. Everybody says, oh, they're running it back with 3-13-1. It's a lot deeper than that. The guys that they have on the team are young guys that have a lot of energy, have a lot of upside. You see what they have on the offensive side of the ball. So I think Jared Goff is a guy that can win games. I mean, you look at a lot of this list, including from 11 on, it's a lot of guys that you're winning with. You're not winning because of. And I think Jared Goff is a guy that if I look at number 10, Mike Vrabel, and what he's had in Ryan Tannehill, I take Jared Goff every day of the week over Ryan Tannehill. That's just my thoughts.
Cody, if you would have ran the Lions, let's just say salary cap aside, and you had a chance to get Baker Mayfield, would you have gotten Baker Mayfield or would you have stayed with Jared Goff?
I think they're similar tiers as far as quarterbacks go. I mean, they're doing different things well. I mean, Jared Goff has proven that he's probably a little bit, so even if he's not a spectacular quarterback, he's probably slightly more reliable in terms of efficiency, accuracy. I mean, his numbers in that regard are good, but personally, yes, I would have entertained the Baker Mayfield thing. And I know that, maybe the familiarity with the system there gives Jared Goff the benefit, maybe the encouraging finish down the stretch last year. Maybe you just don't want to deal with the baggage, but I don't think there was that much risk in doing it. I mean, you're looking at the Panthers are going to pay $5 million, which is, low end backup money. And maybe the Lions couldn't have worked it out that way, but Jared Goff's deal, even though it's very expensive, they can get out of it. They're past the point where, especially next offseason. But Baker Mayfield's a guy that his moxie, you talked about moxie from Jared Goff coming from the press conferences. I mean, that's a guy where if you're talking about a natural pairing, I mean, I don't see a more seamless character pairing than Dan Campbell and Baker Mayfield, who are just both roughhouse kind of guys. I think that he would have been an injection of some juice into the offense, and maybe the reliability isn't there, but honestly, like if you were to say that the odds of you having to reset at quarterback after 2023 are the same with Baker Mayfield as Jared Goff, I mean, I think the outcomes are probably similar. I mean, you're either going to know by the end of this year or not that Jared Goff's the guy, and I think the same thing would have been the case with Baker Mayfield.
It would have been a no-brainer to have Baker here at $5 million. But besides that, last thing from me, the 6.5's the number. You got him over or under?
Ooh. I'm going to go under. I'm sorry, I'm on the Lions show.
It's all right.
No, you're fine, man.
What I would say is the tough part, so I don't think the Bears are going to be very competitive. I think the Packers are still going to be, in the playoff mix. And so you have to look at the division. And then the Vikings, I think, have an actually underrated roster. I mean, I know Kevin O'Connell's unproven. But, look, you have to just look at Kirk Cousins, Dalvin Cook, Justin Jefferson, an improved defense.
Solid.
Those are guys that have been there, done that.
Well, we can't thank you enough for joining us today. Cody Benjamin, staff writer for CBS Sports. You're welcome back anytime.
Oh, definitely.
And the more you trash the Lions, the more we're going to want to bring you back. Because I want answers,
You
baby.
and I be on the same side always, Cody.
Yeah, you and Braylon seem to be pretty much aligned.
There we go.
Well, I appreciate you having me on, inviting the conversation. Maybe next time we talk, we'll be, Dan Campbell will be right in the middle of the pack or something. So we'll see.
There it is.
There
it is.
Well, thank you very much. Cody Benjamin joining us today. You can read his stuff at cbs.com.
And you can follow him at Cody J. Benjamin on Twitter.
And apparently he catches a lot of heat on Twitter, too. So go ahead and give it to him, Lions fans. Give it to him on Twitter. But no, that's awesome of him to join us and go over his list with us. There's a lot more to this, you guys.